One of the biggest misconceptions about Russians is that half of us live in tiny apartments called Hrushchevkas and the other half dwell in distant Siberian villages where the food is dropped from a helicopter once a month. The second statement is definitely not true, because according to the census results, 74% of Russians live in urban areas, either towns or cities. Then, after all, was the first statement true? Not exactly. What if I tell you that almost every Russian family has a second summer house? Or rather, a house, a garden, a plot for growing your vegetables, and sometimes even a private bathhouse. And all of this is called a Russian dacha. Let's start with some history. What is this dacha? In fact, the word dacha comes from the verb давать, that is, to give. But why?
Why?
Well, we should probably blame Peter here.
Guilty!
No, not that Peter. Peter the Great. Peter wanted his subordinates to stay close to him even on vacations, so he granted them plots of land near St. Petersburg. So basically he given them, hence the name. He was a cunning son of Natalia Naryshkina. All of the dachas were located exactly between St. Petersburg and Peterhof, the estate of the emperor. So during any trip he could visit each of his minions and check what they were doing there. So basically dachas were a tool to tie them to a new capital, because not everyone wanted to leave cozy Moscow for this swamp called St. Petersburg. In general, the original word dacha had a different meaning. Rather, it was a manor or estate. Huge houses with gigantic territories, hunting grounds and servants. Even emperors owned dachas. Nicholas I was, well, the first. He gave his beloved wife a plot of land in Peterhof, where a house of 27 rooms was built. And believe me, modern dachas have less. Most of the foreigners know the word dacha thanks to the great Anton Pavlovich Chekhov. Just remember his famous The Cherry Orchard. However, in his time this word was already used differently. Serfdom was gradually abolished and the nobles ceased to play such a major role in the society. But they still had enormous wealth, their ancestral lands. And wealthy citizens, merchants, lawyers, engineers also wanted to feel like landowners. And their own dachas provided them with such a unique opportunity. There, in the country, they could enjoy their little estate, away from the bustle of the city. It is on the threshold of the 20th century that the little summer cottage becomes a favorite vacation spot for both the creative intelligentsia and ordinary citizens. By the beginning of the century, there are so many dachas in Russia that even nowadays we have settlements called Krasnaya dacha, Batratskaya dacha or Konная dacha. By 1888, there were about 6,000 dachas around Moscow, from rebuilt peasant huts to wealthy mansions. It would seem that this was the heyday of dacha culture in Russia, but... Yes, the revolution. In 1917, any private property was banned, which means that dachas were declared illegal in Soviet Union. And instead of individually owned dachas, general population got access to group recreational facilities such as sanatoriums. A popular Soviet phrase was "All around me belongs to the people, all around me belongs to me." But as you probably know, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Therefore, for example, Tavarish Stalin owned 18 dachas. He was a big man, so these summer residences were both near Moscow and in Crimea or Abkhazia. By the way, he even died there, in his residence that was called Blizhnya dacha, which means the nearest dacha. Well, it was probably the nearest out of 18. Fun fact, even after 17 years, it is still a specially guarded facility protected by the Federal Protective Service. I wonder what secrets this cottage keeps. But we drifted away from the topic. Stalin's dachas were huge estates, so other prominent people of the USSR also wanted the same. Initially, dachas were provided only to the best statesmen, Soviet leaders, generals, writers and artists. For example, here you can see the village of Peredelkino, a special settlement for summer residences of famous Soviet authors, from Chukovsky and Pasternak to Yevtushenko and Voznesensky. The funny thing is that the USSR completely repeated the history of Imperial Russia. At first dachas were only for the elite, and then they became available to everyone. During the time of Khrushchev in the USSR, plots were distributed left and right. However, due to the characteristics of communism, this happened collectively. For example, a large factory was given a plot of land that was further divided into smaller plots and given to the best workers. Let's consider that most of the people in USSR lived in barracks, and such a gift was truly a manna from heaven. But in fact it was no longer a huge estate, it was a small plot of land around 600 square meters, with a wooden house and a small private vegetable garden. And behind the fence was not a wild forest with your own hunting grounds, but a house of your fellow co-worker. But people still rejoiced. They built and refined these houses themselves, grew vegetables and fruits in the plots, built Russian banyas, and visited each other. It is clear that not everyone had the best sites. The aforementioned Peredelkino is within the borders of modern Moscow, but many other residents had to travel 30, 40, 50 kilometers and sometimes even travel to the other regions to get to their dachas. But people did it anyway, since dachas were a salvation from boring city life. These cottages even became some kind of a symbol of success in the USSR. More precisely, one of the eternal trinity of apartment, car, dacha. And so it was until the next stage of Russia's life. The 90s. Private property reappears in Russia. Has the number of dachas begun to increase? No, because 90% of the population did not have money. Some lucky ones had money, and they began to cosplay the aristocracy of pre-revolutionary Russia. 3 or 4 story brick dachas placed behind huge fences began to appear. New Russian cottages, often without their own garden but with a terrible, tasteless design. But let's not talk about them now. For the majority of Russians in the 90s, dachas became a real salvation. There was no money, no salaries paid, so what could the townspeople do? Grow potatoes, carrots, cucumbers, tomatoes on their dachas and eat them. I can give you an example from my own life. I was born in the early 90s in a family of 2 engineers. We didn't have enough money, so the dacha saved us, giving food for the whole summer and half of the winter. But it doesn't mean that I loved it. Believe me, when every weekend of your childhood begins with a trip to the dacha for digging potatoes under a scorching sun, the love to dachas quickly passes. So, what is happening today? Today, dacha for the most residents of Russia is often just a country house. Increasingly, these land plots are not acquired for growing fruit and vegetable crops, but only for the purpose of recreation. In large cities with developed suburbs, dachas are also widely used for permanent residence. This is especially true for the south of Russia. According to polls data, more than 60% of Russian population has dachas. Most residents of Russia spend their holidays there. However, fewer people grow vegetables nowadays. For example, for my family, no more potatoes, no more tomatoes, no more beets. Only seasonings such as dill and parsley, arugula or salad, as well as fruits and berries, strawberries, currants, cherries, sea buckthorn and apples. It's nice to have tasty products on hand when you know that they are 100% natural, not modified by anything and not processed by tons of pesticides. Although the largest steel plant in Europe is 20 kilometers away from our dacha, and it looks like this. Yeah, maybe not 100% natural. Yeah. Still, many people are using dachas to grow food, especially senior citizens. According to statistics, with an average Russian dacha of 600 square meters, the hardworking summer resident receives an average of 540 kilograms of potatoes and other vegetables, The average summer garden gives 250 kilograms of fruits per year. This product costs 2 times more than the average annual pension of a Russian pensioner. Naturally, the phenomenon of dachas is not only Russian. Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Soviet dachas have been preserved everywhere, and the population is happy to use them. The most interesting thing is that foreigners are ecstatic with Russian dachas. It is kind of exotic, it's a perfect place to gather with friends, and it's just a relaxed pace of life. For them, a summer residence is nature, a bathhouse and barbecue. While for an average Russian, dacha is rising at 6 in the morning, digging potatoes for 5 hours in a row, and then having a sore back for a week. However, today Russian dacha may cease to exist. In January 2019, a law came into force that abolished the concept of dacha, traditional for Russian culture. Now the summer properties are divided into gardening plots or vegetable farming partnerships. So most likely, dachas in its Soviet sense will gradually be a thing of the past. People will increasingly buy the garden plots, not to work hard on them, but just to relax. Nevertheless, the Russian dacha will forever remain a unique phenomenon, not inherent in any other country in the world.